Welcome everybody. Welcome to another episode of Text on Video Calls Having Coffee. Today, Sean is joining me. Sean Graham is a friend of Innovation Networks, a friend of ours. He's our insurance provider. So today we don't have somebody overly technical, but Sean comes at technology from a different angle, from the insurance point of view. You know, cybersecurity, people are hearing this all the time, especially in business. We get this question all the time, and they're like, what even is cybersecurity insurance? Why do I need it? What is this sorcery? And explain this to us like we're 5-year-olds. I think a lot of people are just confused because the naming of it is misleading. I think.
It is.
It gives a false sense of comprehension. So give us your Coles Notes version of what is cybersecurity insurance.
Sure, that sounds good. First thing I'll say is that cyber is a crappy name. I totally agree with you. I think cyber is the access point for the loss, but it doesn't really reflect the breadth of what these policies actually cover. And so effectively, cyber policies cover four things. One is they cover property damage. So they'll cover issues like if you get hit by a ransomware attack and your system's super crypto locked up and you can't get it unlocked, they'll evaluate, do we need to replace your bricking, all your infrastructure, your servers, your computers, or can we pay for specialists like yourselves to come in and unlock it? Second thing is it will cover any third-party lawsuits or investigations that happen as a result of having a breach of some kind. So, if you have a privacy breach and the commissioner wants to investigate, it'll cover those costs. If you're named in a lawsuit because you let some private data get exposed, it'll cover the cost for that and any of the settlement costs as well. And then the third thing it'll cover is crime. It'll cover, the funds that you accidentally transfer out. Actually, I should give you a little bit of caveat. 3 and 4, the things it'll cover, not all cyber policies have this. Right policy in place for your business, it will. So it'll cover cyber crime. Crime is when somebody says, "Hey, we've changed our banking information. Can you send your invoice for that service or for that product? Can you send to this new account?" And you go, "Oh, sure," and you just send off the new account to the new account number. It's in Hong Kong, it's in Ukraine, it's in North Korea, whatever, and the money's gone. So cyber policies, when they're robust and properly structured, they'll cover that loss. And then the last one, which I think is the big one, is it will cover your loss of income. I can tell you horror stories of companies being shut down because of a ransomware or a hack or a breach. Their systems are crashed, they're crypto locked, they're fill in the blank, and they cannot operate, sometimes for months at a time. And the loss of income can be massive for your organization. And again, not all policies carry the business interruption coverage, it's called, but when it's there, it is the gold in these policies.
Yeah, that's the one for me. It can be quite a long time until you're back up and running.
Can you give an example of how long typically? Like, what would you say is a typical amount of time that somebody's down, not able to operate?
You know what? It really depends. If you don't have any of your ducks in a row, right? So a lot of the customers, they don't have any of the remediation pieces in place, right?
Right.
So they don't have the time. They don't have the restore, the data backups, the restore in place. They don't have the unencryption software in place. They don't have any of that stuff to give us a leg up. So if we're starting from scratch, it can be 4 to 6 weeks. The interruption is staggering to your staff, to customers. Where do they go?
Your brand takes a huge hit.
Massive hit. It's just
the comment I often get is, "Well, isn't that covered by my other insurance policies?" And the answer is simply, absolutely no, not at all. Every other policy actually excludes any kind of cyber breach or cyber incident. Yeah. So it's the only policy where you'll find this kind of coverage is in a cyber policy. Right. Yeah. People buy an all risk insurance policy and they're like, "Well, cyber's a risk." Yeah. All risk means all the risks that we insure and don't exclude.
Right. Yeah.
One of the things that we see all the time is we see claims constantly coming in. Ransomware in particular used to ask for we need $5,000 in Bitcoin. Now they're asking for on average $120,000 in Bitcoin. So, and depending on their revenue, so many people had no idea that their systems were exposed. Passwords not being changed regularly enough, passwords not being kicked out when they're logging in. They log in 18 times and the system doesn't say, okay, you're locked out, like
Yeah.
over and over again.
We see that when you do a security assessments, we're seeing sometimes in the thousands of failed login attempts that nobody's picking up on. There's no policy in place to see these things, like, stop letting the guy log in. No policies on the firewall to, stop this IP address from coming in if it's trying to do this, or trying to do a brute force. We see a lot of these simple policies that could prevent a lot of these things. Another thing that we see is those people have access to, like I said, too much access, right?
Right.
Just because Sally's part of the administrative group doesn't mean she needs to have administrative access to the servers, right?
Right.
Now you can get an internal bad actor doing something with that password, or they don't have proper permissions on the folder. Somebody's got access to the accounting folder, or the accounting folder doesn't have proper permissions. Everybody's got access to it. Now everybody doesn't have a share to it, but if you know how to browse the network, you can find it. Same thing with HR files and so on and so forth. The second most popular thing, beside the failed login attempts, we see is the unencrypted private data on the network. So we'll find credit card files, credit card numbers. We'll find bank account numbers. We'll find SIN numbers. All kinds of private data that's just stored on people's desktops in Word files, PDFs. That's unencrypted, which is we think is a huge liability. I don't know how that works from the insurance point of view.
It is a huge liability. The laws in Canada and in BC are now really robust when it comes to private data. Like if you don't have the right infrastructure in place, if you have a data breach, they'll investigate it through the Commissioner of Privacy. If they find you don't have the right fail safes in place to protect that data, they'll find you liable. And as soon as you're found liable, there's a penalty that's imposed, and you have no ability to appeal that penalty. They are like above the law when it comes to their ability to impose fines. It's crazy.
Yeah, and would your insurance cover you for that type of breach?
It does. Yeah, it covers you. It covers you for the investigation costs, which the Commissioner shoves over to you and says, "Here, this is what it costs to do a forensic investigation on you. Here's your cost," and then the penalty as well. Cyber covers both of those.
Yeah, and we found that even when we put decent policies in place, even the best of our companies that are really tight on policy, they still have, there's that one guy who's like, I don't, I want to have it in an Excel file because it's easier for me, and I don't want to.
It's easier.
Yeah, and and we've had like 4 talkings to him. But if an investigation were to happen, in the middle of that, they could be liable for a fine.
They are. It's interesting, and that also breaches over, which we can talk on a different time, over onto the directors and officers insurance, because the governance needs to be aware of their infrastructure, and if they're not, and they've got these cracks that are happening, they can be held liable for negligence. So that's a whole other topic. But I want to touch base a little bit. You brought some stuff about about the exposures that you see all the time. Everybody, when I talk to people about cyber, like will the insurer actually pay? The answer is, I always say the same thing. I'm like, insurers are selfish. They do not want to pay your claim. That's the truth. But they will pay your claim. But what we found with cyber is they've realized that these claims can be mitigated before they occur. And so cyber insurers, because they're selfish and don't want to pay claims, they've created this infrastructure of supports that will help clients to know in real time what's going on in their system. I've seen some of the new apps on your phone that people are being provided by certain insurers that will literally give you a warning if there is a breach in process, or if there's a ransomware detected, or like they'll give you real-time updates if a password is being exposed on the dark web. It's amazing data, and the reason they're doing that is, again, they don't want to have to pay a claim. They want you to close the gap, and so they want you as a client to be aware, so you can call up Innovation Networks and say, hey, we've been told we have these exposures. Can you help us close them down? And right away, it's real-time data that's coming out. And what's amazing is there's a few insurers right now that have the ability to run over 80,000 data points instantaneously on any public access points in your infrastructure, in your company's infrastructure, and give you a real-time risk assessment. which we can provide to anybody in 5 minutes. So these insurers are investing heavily in the technology side to understand the risks, and a lot of people don't understand that. They think that that insurance is always about paying out after the problem.
No.
Cyber insurance is about solving the problem before it occurs, and then if chaos still strikes, then it'll back you up, which is a total shift in the insuring world.
To sum this up today, so there are tools out there, of course. You want to do your assessments up front. We preach this all the time. Your network provider, your insurance company should be providing you some tools to do some assessments up front. Know what your exposure is, know where you're falling behind potentially, and then next steps, put in a roadmap to solve it, right? Because I know a lot of the customers we run into, they don't have the ability either financially or just from interruption, right? Just to replace 50 access points across 5 locations, that kind of disrupts their business. So are insurers flexible with companies that put in a roadmap like that to say, yeah, we'll do it, but we're going to do it over time because there's an interruption to our business, and we just can't stop production, file swoop, get everybody done in one day kind of thing.
Yeah, insurers love companies that are proactive. If you show that you're proactive, you're going to get preferential rating.
Well, this market space is changing so quickly, and the exposure, and the financial motivation for these hackers to do what they're doing, the value of the data on the dark web, all of these things, all the arrows, all the motivation is moving in the wrong direction for the small business and the medium business and the large business and the enterprise.
Yeah.
It's all working against us. So we definitely need, to work together with this insurance industry and, secure that and close that gap. And I do find that, there's been a lot of movement. Like you said, the tools are coming. They're starting to get more proactive instead of reactive, which is instead of just waiting for you to not be able to make a claim and say, oh, wrist slap, sorry, next time. They're actually getting ahead of it and saying, let's do these things.
For me, it's the most refreshing thing I've seen in insurance in ages. Finally, let's not be reactive, let's be proactive. That's the best way to describe it. Cyber insurance policies are proactive. Let's deal with it before there's a problem. And then they back you up when chaos strikes. What more could you ask? That's awesome.
That's it. Well, Sean, as always, my man, fantastic. And I know we've got tons more things on ransomware and payouts and all those other things.
We'll go down the rabbit hole. Don't you worry.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. Thanks for joining me today, and we'll talk soon.
Appreciate it.
Take care.
Bye.
Cheers.